and we are going to be recording our meeting today. So if you don't wish to be on recording, but you do hope to communicate with us, just put your messages in the chat, because anyone that does speak will be on the recording, but if you do not speak, you will not be on the recording. Anyway, this really is the makeup of society, right? These bills are the makeup of society. They are the bricks in our buildings and the seeds in our soil. So again, let us really grow our future. And though it may be an unknown state, our future, we can affect it with the seeds that have been sown. Some will germinate and sprout, while others will stay dormant till next growing season, and others still will rot. Today, you will be updated on the seeds that have sprouted, so the bills that have been passed and that are making it through this first lateral, and you will not, we're just going to be focusing on the future here. We're going to be focusing on the present and future. So we're going to focus on the bills that have been passed in the context of climate change and our environment. And without further ado, I'll hand it off to Ted, who is our moderator for today, and he is going to kick us off with the agenda as well as a brief introduction. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Tyler. Great job. Very inspiring. Good to have you open with that. And welcome, everybody. Tyler's already done that, but I see the list growing, and I really appreciate all of you spending your time on a weekend to do this. Today's agenda is really about looking forward. For those of you who don't do legislation all the time, the legislature it's very quick, and hearings have to occur at a rapid pace. In the House of Representatives, a lot of our bills get triple referrals, and there's something called the first lateral, which is a rule of both chambers of the legislature, that if your bills do not get referred to their final committee by today, then they die. Nothing is final, and they could always be resurrected if leadership wanted to resurrect them. But basically, the bills are dead if they're not heard by their committees and referred to their last committee by today. So that's part of the reason we're having this today, is that this is such a key point in the legislative process, because a whole lot of bills have died this week. Many good bills. And that's part of the process. There's about 2,500 bills that have been introduced this year, and only a couple hundred are going to pass. A lot are going to fall by the wayside. And some of them are good, and some of them are not good. So it's a mixed bag. But today we're going to focus on the bills that are live that we think are significant, to try to update you on what's worth following in the legislature, and when we would like you to testify, to the extent we have that information. A number of bills are already set for hearing next week, and in the coming weeks there'll be lots of, I would say in the next 2 weeks, there'll be lots of hearings scheduled on the bills that are live. So what we'll do today, we'll have a video from Senator Mike Gabbard. I'll do a brief talk about Representative Lowen, Chair of the Environment and Energy and Environmental Protection Committee, and Chair Tarnas of the Water and Land Committee in the House. Neither of those folks were able to make it today because they've got a hearing on Mauna Kea, which is an important topic for all of us. So after we do that, we'll go through some of the task force reports from individuals who have been facilitating task forces set up after our December 4th HECA meeting. Thanks to those people for doing that work, for everybody who's participated in the task force. It's really great to see people step up and get involved. And after we do those task force reports, we'll have some Q&A and then say goodbye. It'll be a little quicker today, I think, because we don't have as many people, and mostly because the legislators are not here in person, so we won't have as much time on their stuff. But the focus is really not on the legislators today, it's on the bills and what we can do moving forward to help pass some good legislation. So with that, thank you for coming, and I would ask folks to queue up the amendment from, excuse me, the let me do the introduction to Chair Gabbard. Senator Michael Gabbard is the chair of the Energy and Environment Committee in the Senate. He's been that for 6 years. He's been in the legislature for I think 20, and he's been a friend on the environment, I would say. He's had passed many bills that I've worked on with him in the past, and he can explain what he's focused on as priorities in the current session in this video. So I would turn it over to, I guess it's to Matt, to cue that up, please.
Hello, Mike Hako, and mahalo for inviting me to another HECA event. I hope you're all well and surviving our fast-track legislative session so far. As you all know, our session is well underway and will continue until May 5th. Each year, around 2,500 to 3,000 bills are introduced, but only about 200 to 300 of them actually become law. This year, 1,386 bills were introduced in the Senate and 1,119 bills in the House, for a total of 2,505 bills. This session marks my 6th year as the Agriculture Environment Chair, and it certainly took off with a bang with the sudden and unexpected departure of my committee clerk, which we are still adjusting to. But all good, we're trying our best. And FYI, recently I joined more than 250 local and state government officials, health professionals, small business owners, academics, and environmental groups from 34 states, plus the District of Columbia, to send a letter to Congress on February 17th, urging them to quickly pass legislation to address climate change. So stay tuned. So yesterday, as many of you know, was the first lateral deadline. In order to meet this deadline, if the bill was referred to more than one committee, and it had to move to its final committee by yesterday. So unfortunately, some of my priority bills did not make it past first lateral due to not getting concurrence from another committee or just running out of time due to being short-staffed. Still, I'm happy to note that there were several climate change and environmental bills that have passed first lateral, so they're still advancing. I'll briefly mention some. Here are 5 bills that we've been working on. First is the Visitor Green Fees Bill, SB Senate Bill 3192. I introduced the Green Fee Bill to support a growing belief that visitors to our state can and should contribute in a more positive way. This bill would collect a fee from visitors to protect and manage Hawaii's natural resources. It was referred jointly to the Energy, Economic Development and Tourism and Water and Land Committees and WAM, Ways and Means, but it didn't make it past the first lateral. The good news is that fortunately there was a similar bill introduced by Ways and Means Chair Senator Dela Cruz, and that was SB 3192 that did pass on Wednesday, and it has been referred to the Ways and Means Committee. So to me, the green fee is a no-brainer. We should all pay our fair share in protection of our state's beauty. The second bill is SB 3325, Carbon Sequestration Incentives Program. We need to do all that we can to reduce our carbon footprint and become carbon negative. While limiting greenhouse gas emissions is important, it's not enough. We must also draw carbon down from the atmosphere. The Carbon Sequestration Incentive Program bill, it sets up a Hawaii ag and forest carbon positive incentive to keep forest and ag lands intact and sequester additional carbon on those lands. The program would allow farmers and landowners to get contracts for engaging in regenerative agriculture and sustainable forest practices, which would encourage the sequestration of atmospheric carbon gases. Third is another important bill moving through the ledge, the Constitutional Green Amendment, SB 2962. And I introduced it last session, and while it didn't pass, it did get the conversation started. So I was glad to see this session, Rep. Lowen was one of the primary introducers of the companion bill in the House, HB 1803, which is also advancing. And if you've heard my previous HECA talks or attended the awesome webinar by the founder of the Green Amendment movement, Maya Van Rossum from Delaware, in January, you may be familiar with Green Amendments, which are provisions that are added to the Bill of Rights section of a state constitution that recognize and protect the rights of all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, or income, including future generations, to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. So this bill would amend our state constitution to protect those rights, and it could be used in cases where those rights are being threatened. If approved, it would protect such rights for present and future generations. 3 states, Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York, have passed green amendments so far, and Hawaii is one of 12 states that have proposed bills. It requires a 2/3 majority to pass the legislature, and then it will appear as a ballot question. And then in November, it would require a simple majority by the voters. The 4th bill is the Healthy Soils Program, SB 2989. We need to create resilient agriculture production systems through living soils, managed water resources, and thriving ag communities. It's good for the land and it's good for our environment, especially as we contend with climate change. So this session, I introduced SB 2989 to begin the journey to do just that. This bill would create a statewide soil health assessment with practices that are effective in improving soil health and building soil carbon stocks. It would also provide farmers with education and technical assistance to implement farm management practices that contribute to healthy soils. The bill would establish standards that apply to the grant program based on reports completed by the Greenhouse Gas Sequestration Task Force. And also, if funding is available, grants and other financial incentives would be awarded to implement farmer management practices. The committees on Ways and Means held a public decision-making, yesterday, and so we'll be on the lookout for what the results are. And in case you missed it, there was an excellent article in the Civil Beat this past week on the importance of healthy soil for our island paradise. And then the last bill I'm reporting on this morning is the Compost Reimbursement Program, SB 3004. I introduced this measure, which would establish and appropriate funds for a compost reimbursement program and manager position within the Department of Ag. According to the USDA, food waste in the US is estimated to be between 30 and 40% of our food supply. And get this, in 2010, the estimate corresponded to approximately 133 billion pounds of food wasted, which was worth $161 billion. This is totally not acceptable. So as you're already aware, one way to reduce food waste is to recycle it into compost. And as a result, there are environmental benefits such as reducing or eliminating the need for chemical fertilizers, reducing methane emissions, promoting higher yields of agricultural crops, aiding reforestation, what else? Wetland restoration, also enhancing water retention in soils and sequestering carbon. So the bill passed out of my AEN committee and it's on its way to the Ways and Means Committee. So to wrap it up, with so many issues to contend with here in Paradise, it can be a challenge to identify what's most important. These are just some of the bills passing through the legislature right now, but there are many others and much work remains to be done. If you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to go to the Capitol website, that's at capitol.hawaii.gov, and identify and track the bills that you're interested in. Each committee has their own webpage, which lists all the bills that the committee plans to hear. It's critical to contact the committee chairs and ask them to schedule any bills that are important to you. And many of you, I know, do this already. So please participate in the legislative process and take advantage of the ability to submit oral and verbal testimony online to make your voice heard. So mahalo to the organizers for this HECA event, and I look forward to continuing my work with all of you for a successful session. Aloha and mahalo.
Thank you so much, Ted. Would you like to take yourself off mute?
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Senator Gabbard, for that wonderful video. I think it really does a great summary, not only of the bills he's working on, but some of the things that we can do as individuals to move legislation forward. Meg Turner from his office is on the call, and I think thanks to Meg also for her work on these bills. Okay, next is Representative Nicole Lowen, who is not able to be with us, as I said today. She is the chair of the Energy and Environmental Protection Committee of the House, has been for 9 years. She's been in office for 9 years, and she represents House District 6 in Kailua-Kona on the Big Island. And she's also a champion for environmental bills. She's got just a huge number of bills that have passed her committee this year because she, like Senator Gabbard, has environment, but she's also got energy. And so a lot of bills. And just to pick on a few for people's interests, her committee has passed House Bill 1800, which would have as a goal to reduce greenhouse gases statewide 70% below 2005 level, and to establish a decarbonization pathway for the state. House Bill 1801 is a refile of a bill that almost passed last year, which relates to building energy efficiency, and as a goal seeks to reduce the energy consumption of state buildings by 30%. And also importantly has a requirement that state buildings, when they're looking to build, look to use low carbon footprint materials, which will also make a big difference. She has a bill to require the upgrade of cesspools at point of sale, or within 1 year after the sale of a property. Cesspools, for those who don't know, are a huge environmental problem in Hawaii, water pollution problem. It's essentially putting raw sewage down a pipe into our groundwater, which then ends up in the ocean and pollutes. And we have a deadline of 2050 to upgrade all the cesspools, but we need to get started. So this bill would get started by having people upgrade at an economically rational time, which is when they have money. It's $30,000 to upgrade a cesspool, or so on average. And when people are in a transaction for real estate, they have cash that's on the table that they don't have at any other time. So it's a good time to get people to do it. We've had a lot of resistance from realtors, but hopefully this is the year that we can pass it. The next bill I would mention is 1811 House Bill, which is infrastructure for EV, electric vehicle charging, and it expands the eligibility for types of chargers that can get rebates. And lastly, another important bill in a new area is House Bill 2399. And this would provide, in the solid waste area and plastics, this would provide extended producer responsibility, which is the notion that producers of plastics and other packaging should be responsible somewhat for their products. They're in the best position to modify their products and reduce waste. This bill is a first step toward EPR and would require some of the big producers to register and pay a fee for the state. Currently, the taxpayers on the county level with the landfills are on the hook for all the landfill expenses. And we really should try to shift some of that to the producers. Just a second, I got a chat question on this. Just to answer Council Lady Kelly King from Maui, it's House Bill 1805. It's the cesspool bill that I was referring to. We can get into this a little more when we get into task forces. So this EPR bill that I was discussing, sorry to interrupt myself, is an important bill for moving forward to a more circular system of waste disposal. We currently produce, use, and throw away or burn all of our waste, all of our solid waste. Hugely wasteful of land, and creates, among other things, when you put it in the landfill, It produces methane. I think a lot of people on this call are already using recycled using cloth bags instead of plastic, and we need to find ways to have products that are less wasteful in their production. And House Bill 2399 is a step in that direction. So those are just some of the bills that Rep. Lowen has been introducing and passing in the EEP committee, and I think those are all good bills, and I hope that they will pass. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the priorities for Representative David Tarnas, who's the chair of the Water and Land Committee. And he's a state representative for House District 7 in North and South Kohala on the Big Island also. He's an environmental planner by trade, and he's the author of the 1990 Ocean Management Plan. Representative Tarnas has been working a lot on bills related to the Act 90, which is dealing with leases of pasture lands by the state. There's a bill, House Bill 1659, which would allow the Department of Land and Natural Resources to extend pasture leases for 65 years, and establishes a working group this is from the Act 90 working group from a few years ago. It's controversial because it's a long extension of time. Another bill, House Bill 1660, would reflect the interest of some people to have the Department of Agriculture control pasture lands rather than DLNR, and particularly with regard to agricultural multi-use lands, that's somewhat controversial. So that's an interesting area. It's like the people who are using pasture land for cattle and other animals very much want to have leases to facilitate their operations. There are other uses of the property, though, for example, for reforestation, where it's not being used for pasture, and that would help to sequester carbon. So there are competing interests here of interest. And lastly, I'd mention House Bill 2024 as a priority for Rep. Tarnas, and this is Mauna Kea stewardship. And this is, like everything Mauna Kea, is controversial, and it gets into how we should handle the lands. And there's so many different opinions about that. I'll just tee up the bill as an item of interest. So those are our legislators and some of their priorities. And at this point, I would turn it back to Tyler to introduce the task forces that have been working on some of these bills. So Tyler?
Thank you so much, Ted. That elaborate description was incredibly inspiring and informative. I will now do a brief introduction for our HECA bills. As you all know, we had a December 4th Climate Action Planning Forum event, and in that event, we all broke out into breakout rooms and discussed certain topics. After this event, we decided that launching task forces to facilitate the movement of certain bills related to the breakout room discussions was a necessary action item. And so with that, we launched 10 task forces assigned to a theme aligned with some of the greatest environmental issues Hawaii is facing. These task forces are composed of community members from across the state that organize to advance specific bills that they have prioritized under the umbrella of their general focus. And I believe today we'll be hearing from about 8 task forces, 8 out of 10. And I'll first pass it off to Matt, who is one of our task force facilitators on carbon pricing. So take it away, Matt, with a brief introduction of the task force, what you guys have been working on, and an update about the bills that have stayed alive.
Thank you, Tyler. So I'm with the Environmental Justice Task Force of Faith Action. I'm Matt Geyer, and as Tyler mentioned, I've been hosting the Carbon Pricing Task Force. And we have been trying to advance the idea of carbon pricing with returning the fee back to residents. You may have heard polluters pay and people prosper. And it seems very simple in concept, right? You just simply put a fee on the companies that are importing fossil fuels into Hawaii, take all that money as much as you can and give it back to the residents. And like anything else, though, it ends up being more complicated. So the state of Hawaii paid quite a bit of money for a study, which was done by UHERO, the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, and tried to find out, well, what would be the impact and would this work? And so UHERO has released their study as well as follow-on information from that. And it turns out that this program would benefit all families in Hawaii. Just about everyone in Hawaii would benefit as individuals. And it's hard to imagine there's a program that could work this well, and we haven't passed it already. But of course, now that we have this information to back up this idea, and we have the Tax Review Commission supporting this idea, as well as a lot of other organizations, we of course are getting pushback from the fossil fuel industry and others that don't want this change. So far, we're lucky. We have HB 2278, which is our bill we are focusing on this year, and it has gotten further than it has ever gotten before. So we're excited about that. We are looking forward to a hearing in the Finance Committee in the House, and that will be the last committee it needs to get a hearing and passed before it would get pushed over to the Senate. So if you are interested in learning more about carbon pricing and how you can help move that forward, we meet every Monday at 1:30 p.m. And feel free to contact me at my email. I'll put it in the chat. And let's see, did I miss anything, John, or maybe Virginia? Want to jump in? Say anything? Okay, well, I will pass it back to, oh, go ahead, Virginia.
I was just going to say, I think you've covered everything, and people can find out how they can help out by attending the breakout session. Is that what the next step? Okay, great.
Well, we're not doing breakout sessions, but they can attend our meetings, and I'll leave contact info in the chat. But okay. So we're, again, Sylvia Luke, contact Sylvia Luke and email her, call her office and say, hey, we want a hearing on HB 2278. Right. We'll pass it back to Tyler.
Thank you so much, Matt. And again, for all the participants out there, we are opening up these task forces to anyone who is interested in getting involved and making their voice heard and in passing these very vital pieces of legislation. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to our second task force on the Green Amendment. Ted, take it away. You're on mute.
I have to unmute because otherwise my papers are bothering you with the noise. The Green Constitutional Amendment Bill that Senator Gabbard referred to is my highest priority for this year because it'll make a fundamental change. This is Senate Bill 2962, which Senator Gabbard, as I said, passed through his Agriculture and Environment Committee with some amendments. This bill would provide a fundamental right that we don't have today in the Hawaii Constitution's Bill of Rights to provide for clean water and air, healthful ecosystems and climate, and healthy ecosystems and beaches. And these rights would be something that people could enforce and would be an influence on legislators and courts and the public. And so I think it's really a great thing. The Green Amendment has been passed in 2 states of Montana and Pennsylvania, and recently in New York State. But in the states where it's been in effect, mostly Pennsylvania and Montana, it's been quite successful, and I think it's a really great and fundamental idea. So that's why we're pushing it. One update, correction, or update to what Senator Gabbard gave us in the video. The bill in the House, House Bill 1803, died in first lateral, did not get a hearing from the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee. So the Senate bill is the one to work for. You can contact the Judiciary Chair, Carl Rhodes, Senator, and Senator Dela Cruz of Ways and Means, who jointly have the next referral, and ask them for a hearing and passage of the Green Constitutional Amendment, Senate Bill 2962, SD1. So that's the main story on Green Constitutional Amendment. Would love to see your support by calling those two senators. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ted. The next task force that we are going to focus on is the Green Fee Task Force. Now, this is one that we actually haven't gotten up and going yet just because of the lack of facilitation. So no one has volunteered yet to be a facilitator for that task force. But I recently got an email from Ton, who is on this meeting, and I wondered if I could ask you to unmute and share a little bit about the green fee.
Sure, thank you. I wasn't preparing any presentation, certainly, but I certainly have interest in the green fee issue. I am familiar with 3 bills that have been presented to the legislature this session dealing with green fees. There's several that were left over from last year, but I think the ones that have been newly presented are probably more important. And there are 2 of those bills, one of which was mentioned by Senator Gabbard and introduced by Senator Gabbard, SB 3192. It proposes a fee which will be as yet to be determined in amount, and it would be placed on visitors as a one-time fee, and it would be dedicated to the parks and trails and beaches of Hawaii, maintenance, and it would be charged on visitors for actually access to beaches and trails and parks that are state-owned. There was a second bill which was essentially identical, but it was it defined a fee of $50 per individual. The third bill that I think is important was introduced by the Maui County Council, and actually this would be my preference of the 3 bills. And it is a fee of $20 per night, and it's levied on the transient accommodations tax as a transient accommodation tax. And looking at how much these several bills would generate in terms of revenue, the estimates that I had seen in terms of the first 2 bills, the single one-time only fee, if at $50 was estimated in the several $100,000 revenue. And of course, that would be dedicated to the parks. The Maui Council bill had a probably will end up if generating in the area between $1 and $2 billion per year, and at $20 per night, I think that the Hawaii Tourism Authority has indicated that the average visitor will spend $1,800 on their visit to Hawaii. An extra, if you imagine a 10-day stay, an extra $200 would probably not be something that would eliminate a visit here from most of those people's itinerary or their agenda, their wherever their vacation is taking them. And the second thing is that the Hawaii Tourism Authority has said that it would actually be desirable to have some limitation on the numbers of visitors here, but mostly looking at those limitations on sort of the budget travelers, whereas they'd like to continue having the high-end travelers come. And so I think, a higher green fee would probably serve that purpose well. So finally, the Maui County Council bill has a second mechanism, which the bill introduced by Senator Gabbard does not have. And that is, it has a mechanism yearly to change the amount of the green fee. The State Climate Commission was proposed as a mechanism for, and the State Climate Commission has, it's a 20-member high-level intergovernmental panel that has membership such as the heads of various departments and representatives and senators and county council, or the planning department heads of each of the islands. And so the proposal is that each year that group would gather and decide what would be the desirable change in the green fee from $20 a night up to perhaps higher, perhaps lower. So my personal choice would be that particular green fee bill. That's not the one that's that's making its way through legislature at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a quick question in the chat. What is the bill number for the Maui County Council green fee bill that you were proposing, Tom?
The numbers?
Yes.
SB 2098 and HB 1439.
Thank you so much for that incredible presentation, and you really rose to the occasion. Sorry for putting you on the spot. We're gonna move on to our fourth task force, which is the decarbonization of state buildings and utilities with John.
Can I interrupt, Tyler,
Yes.
and just ask Ton if he knows which of the bills he talked about are still alive?
Senator Gabbard, yeah, Senator Gabbard's bill, I believe, is still alive. But the other two, the Maui County Council bill, and I believe it's not even had a committee assignment. So, but I believe that Senator Gabbard's bill is still alive and would be worthy of support, even if it's not my favorite of the three.
And what's the number on that bill, Ton? Do you know?
Senator Gabbard's is SB 3192.
Okay.
I think green fee is hugely important. It could generate a lot of revenue, and I think it would be a major step forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, again, passing it off to John for the decarbonization of state buildings and utilities.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. So I'm making this report for Paul Bernstein, who's the facilitator, but he couldn't be with us today. So please forgive me if I'm not too familiar with the bills. So the task force is interested in the decarbonization of state government buildings and utilities, such as Hawaiian Electric. And I'm going to talk about bills that made it past the first lateral deadline yesterday. So first off, for state buildings energy efficiency, Representative Lowen introduced HB 1801 HD1 and also SB 2963 SD1 has to do with energy efficient state buildings. Both of these bills require state buildings, with some exceptions, to adopt cost-efficient, energy-efficient measures. These bills also require new state buildings to be designed to maximize energy and water efficiency, maximize energy generation, and use building materials that reduce the carbon footprint of the building.
HB 1801 is in the Finance Committee, and SB 2963 is in the Ways and Means Committee. There's another bill that emphasizes the carbon footprint of state buildings. It's HB 2423. And that one also emphasizes the use of construction materials to reduce the carbon footprint of state highways. So that bill, HB 2423, is in the Finance Committee now. So regarding the decarbonization of utilities, HB 2089 HD1 and SB 3057 have to do with the renewable portfolio standard. So every utility generates, or every electric utility generates electricity using fossil fuels and renewable energy. So they have a portfolio that has renewable energy and fossil fuels. The Renewable Portfolio Standard Law requires the utilities to use increasing proportions of renewable energy until they hit 100%. The current RPS percentage is based on sales of electricity, which can be misleading. For example, 100% RPS based on sales could mean that only 80% of the electricity is generated from renewable sources. So these bills, HB 2089 and SB 3057, change the RPS from one based on sales to one based on generation. So we want these bills to pass. HB 2089 is in the CPC committee, and they have a hearing on the 23rd of February. SB 3057 is in the CPN committee in the Senate. And the last bill I want to talk about has to do with firm energy. It's SB 2513 SD1. And this bill has some positive aspects, but it includes a requirement that intermittent power sources must be able to deliver equivalent power for 96 hours when they are not generating. This is too stringent a requirement because it would prevent the approval of most, if not all, competitive bids for any solar or wind projects in Hawaii. And that is contrary to the strong public interest in developing such sources. So the task force opposes this measure. This measure is up for decision-making in the Ways and Means Committee on the 22nd. So again, this measure should be opposed. Okay, thanks, Tyler, and I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, John. Now we are going to be talking a little bit about the decarbonization of transportation. So I'm going to pass it off to Bill Bugby, who is here, or
It's me.
Got it.
I'm going to be presenting, and I'm going to share my screen. That's okay.
That's okay. You have a little bit of feedback or something.
Is
I
that
hear it.
better? Now can you hear it?
Not really. Can everyone else hear that?
Let me switch out my AirPods.
I apologize for the technical difficulties here. Gotta give grace, right? This happens all the time. I am not very keen myself. We all have audio issues, so just keep the conversation rolling. Sorry, this is an awkward Zoom moment. Woohoo! Celebrate it. 2 years of awkward Zoom moments.
Okay, is that better?
That's way better. I'm sorry, just rambling on here.
I've been having issues with my AirPods. I don't know why. Let me share my screen really quick. Okay. So we have quite a few bills, and it's pretty exciting. You know, our goal of this task force is to expand EV adoption, whether that be public or private, passenger vehicle, cars, buses, etc. And 2022 is a pretty pivotal year. If anybody watched the Super Bowl, I think there were 5 EV commercials versus 1 gas car commercial. So it's really, we're really seeing a change in awareness, and that's actually reflected in the number of bills that we have moving forward this session. So we put together a list of our high priority bills, and there are some with action items that some that have hearings scheduled for this upcoming week. So we would appreciate your support with those. The first one is the SB 2570 SD1, and that one actually adds hydrogen charging stations or fueling stations to the EV rebate program, to the charger rebate program. The funds for that program, I believe it's 500,000, 500 or 700,000. But the point is that hydrogen stations are very expensive, and if they were coupled with this EV charger rebate, it would take away the funds for us to implement EV chargers. So we oppose this bill, and we want to make a recommendation to either defer this bill or put it in a separate fund for hydrogen vehicles. You know, the amount of hydrogen vehicles versus electric vehicles there's vast difference. I think there's about 35 hydrogen versus 17,000 EVs. So we believe that the fund should be saved for EV chargers. And so there's a hearing with WAM next week on the 23rd at 10 a.m. The next one, there's a SB 3158, and that one has, let's see, hearing scheduled for next week as well. And that is a rebate for electric bikes and mopeds and things like that. So that's something that we also support. The next one that has a hearing is 3311, and that's refers to ground transportation and inter-island transportation as far as zero emission vehicles. So that establishes working groups to study that. And next we have, and I tried to, before I got on this call, I tried to signal which ones are the ones moving forward. So those are the ones with the arrows. So 1811, which is, we had talked about, Nicole Lowen had sponsored that bill, and that is a EV charger rebate for single port EV chargers. So that's an important one that we support. I'm not going to go through the rest of those. The zero, let's see, important ones are EV charger rebates for low and moderate income households and projects. HB 2090 is another important one to get that EV charging infrastructure out there. We can increase the adoption of EV vehicles, but we also need, we actually kind of desperately need to increase the EV charger infrastructure. So a lot of these bills, expanding that, we're in full support of. And another one I want to call your attention to is SB 2803, and that is the zero emission bus requirement. And I'm just going to go to the next page here. So we have high priority, and then we have kind of medium high priority bills. SB 3313, that is a road user fee, road use, I guess it's based on how many miles you drive for EVs. Initially, that wasn't clear if it was on top of an EV registration surcharge. So that was made clear that that replaces that registration surcharge for EVs. So we're just watching that bill. Next one, HB 1443 and SB 2054. That is the impact fee for rental cars. For that one, we are pushing to, we support it, but we want to make a comment that we would like EVs to be excluded from that additional impact fee. And the final one, I think John talked about the renewable portfolio standard. One thing that we would like to push for, and this is indirectly related to EVs, is to actually have, there's an exception of that the customer grid is not included on that. So that has a hearing with the CPC next week as well. The final one that we want to bring your attention to is the HB 802. These are a couple of bills that really didn't go through. We like to try to get that language in somewhere, and it actually takes out an aggregation rule where property owners can basically use, if they have like 5 chargers in one center, 2 chargers in another center, they can aggregate that together to comprise what their requirement is overall. And I think that is all we are watching now. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Really good to see compared to the last few years. And we're hoping that, a lot of these bills will make it through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nanette. And I'm sorry for the miscommunication on my part. Very happy to have you present today and excited about all the momentum that EV is receiving. I'm now going to pass it off to our next task force on carbon sequestration with Kara Oba.
Hi, okay. So I'm the facilitator for the carbon sequestration and task force. And where the group started is we're interested in sort of protecting things like watersheds. And that was the primary focus at first. And we identified 2 bills. I'll go through them in more detail in a second. They're HB 2493. It's currently at HD2. It has had 2 amendments. And then also SB 3325. So 3325, that's the one that Senator Gabbard had mentioned. And that one has had 1 amendment also. So in the process of meeting and talking about protection of forests, we did reach out to a number of people since none of us were actually experts in the area. And so we did get some input from a variety of people in the community. Susan Crow told us a little bit about where these incentives programs, where the bill came from. And then we also talked to some people from DLNR to get some feedback from them also. So you'll see as I go through this in a little bit, there are some changes that came through. So the idea of what the bill was is that it supports the food security and watershed protection, and it's encouraging carbon positive actions in both agriculture and in forestry. The bill was written to sort of identify and work with sort of the small to medium landholders or landowners and lessees. And in the process, there are some changes. So right now, those 2 bills kind of started as companion bills, very identical, and now they've shifted a little, and I think the changes are worth noting. So HB 2493 in its 2nd iteration now, they've added the addition of land managers. So previously it was only directed to land lessees and owners, and I think this is a good change in terms of like at least opening it up to more people, and this is something that came from DLNR also in talking with them. They've also included Native Hawaiians as part of the application reviewing committee. Previously, the application reviewing committee wasn't really specified. This program is going to be administered by HGIA, which is the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. At least that's according to what the bill is set out to originally. So the reviewing committee now includes HGIA designee and DLNR Ag, and then it includes the Native Hawaiian, 2 members, and then also whomever else. So it's a more open group. So in terms of where SB 3325 went, this is the First Amendment. It's now changing the language here of, instead of HGIA being the administrator or authority of this program, it's going to be the Office of Planning, at least according to their language. And so this is something that Danielle Bass had mentioned. She had provided testimony on that, and they have a greenhouse gas sequestration task force existing that has been doing a lot of research on these types of issues. And so she felt that they would be more suitable for administering the program. The group that hasn't really weighed in on any of this. This is just, I'm just sharing you sort of the updates from the experts that we have talked with and learned from along the way. So that is one of the major changes there. And also, one of the issues that the task force had identified that was sort of concerning was people using the lands and not necessarily making improvements, but also selling them for carbon credits. And so that was something that the group was sort of against, that was opposed. And in this SD1 version, there's also changes that have been recommended to the HRS section 225P-6, which is about the carbon offset program that I guess is currently existing, and they have struck that language. So it looks like they're taking away the carbon offset program as originally detailed in that section. So I think that might also be something worth noting. It seems like a positive change also. So again, these two bills have gone through some iterations, and their new amendments seem to be sort of favorable, at least by what the task force has sort of identified as priorities. So I just want to share those with you. I guess lastly, there are many other bills that are related in terms of like encouraging composting or the cover crops, things that support additional carbon sequestration activities, including the bill SB, I guess the one that I haven't written down, the one that Gabbard mentioned, also the Healthy Soils Program. So if that's something that is of interest to anyone, that's also coming up for, it's actually been deferred. So it's coming up for a hearing on the 22nd. So that's something, if you wanted to weigh in on, you can get your testimony in shortly. And I think that's SB, let me look for it in a second. I think it's 2989, the Healthy Soils Program. Yeah. Okay, so that's my summary. I hope that covers everything. If anyone else wants to jump in and add anything, feel free. Otherwise, if you would like to, you can contact me and I can try to send an email on our updates. We do have a running list of comments from people that we've reached out to. So you can join the discussion there also. I'll send an email to the group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. I'm now going to pass it off to Ted to speak about the Cesspools task force, who sadly cannot join us today. Facilitators in person cannot join us today, but Ted will be representing.
Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, Stuart Coleman couldn't be here today and asked me to talk about the bills. I already spoke about the main bill on cesspools, which is House Bill 1805, HD1, I think. And it would, as I said before, just to recap, it would provide that when you sell your house, if you have a cesspool, you have 1 year in which to upgrade it. The buyer and seller can negotiate over who's going to pay the cost, and it comes out of the proceeds of the sale from one side or the other. It also allows a tax credit for those who are upgrading the cesspool and incur that cost. So that's some benefit to them to reduce the rather large costs. Two other bills that are relating to cesspools. House Bill 2088 is property assessed financing, which opens up some private capital for people to borrow, and it goes with the land so that there's more ability to get bank financing for the upgrade. And so that's a creative way, I think, to enable more people to upgrade their cesspools. As I said before, this is a big environmental problem for the state, and it's a big expense, about $2 billion to upgrade all the cesspools in the state by 2050. To do that, we have to upgrade 3,000 cesspools a year, just to give you a feel for the challenge that's involved. And half of them are on the Big Island, and so that's a particular problem for people on the Big Island. Third bill is House Bill 2195, which provides for, it's a pilot providing grants for low and moderate income people who are upgrading their cesspools. So that's, again, some more financial help. Stuart and I and others serve on the cesspool conversion working group, where we, with about 15 other people, discuss these issues and intend to report to the legislature later this year on proposals for how to solve this rather large economic problem that we face, and environmental problem that we face with cesspools. So if you're interested in those bills, they are in the House Finance Committee, and you can contact Chair Sylvia Luke. I put her information in the chat a moment ago. So if you're interested, that's how you can get involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ted. We're on our final task force. This is a climate justice action planning facilitated by Joshua Cooper. So I'm going to pass it off to him. Are you present, Joshua?
I am present. Thank you so much, Tyler. I appreciate that. we just have a couple things to share about our task force. We had our first meeting, and when we did our first meeting, well, we had a lot of people sharing a lot of ideas. And when we shared our ideas, people want to come up with, they said, a strong resolution. So we've been looking at bringing together some of the language that has existed around rights of nature. And so we've been looking at that. We've been talking to Kai with the center here in the United States, but then also looking and speaking with Maori in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to look at how they were doing things around Whanganui. So we're preparing a panel to then share that information with everyone. And we've also been looking at two international regional conventions, you could say, in the loosest sense, the Aarhus Convention and the Escazú Agreement. The Aarhus one was scheduled originally just around Europe, but is now seen African nations sign on. And the other one, Escazú, is Latin America. So we're examining the language of both of that and drafting some language for resolutions. But those are our two main things, and it's an honor to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you, everyone. I want to just send out a big wave of gratitude to all of our presenters today, as well as all of our participants. Now is the time for a quick Q&A session. So if anyone has burning questions for any of our task forces or other presenters, please drop them in the chat and we'll be sure to get back to them in the best capacity as possible. And if not, I'm gonna hand it off to Ted to finish us off with some additional bills that he would recommend to follow and say aloha. Thank you.
Before I do that, anybody got any questions? I know Tyler just called for it, but I'm giving you another opportunity here before I launch. Okay, as Tyler indicated, I'll talk about some other interesting bills that haven't been covered by the task forces. Senate Bill 2513 would require intermittent power sources like solar and wind to guarantee backup for 96 hours while unable to generate. Some say this would prevent solar and wind projects by requiring too much backup power. There's a hearing, decision making only, so written testimony in the Ways and Means Committee on Monday at 10 a.m. if you wanted to submit testimony. Excuse me, I guess the hearing's Tuesday, so submit testimony by Monday, 10 a.m. There's another one, Senate Bill 2570 SD1, which expands the definition of zero-emission vehicle infrastructure capable of rebates for installation and upgrade to include hydrogen stations. Some say this would take away from the decarbonizing electric vehicle charging. Again, that has a hearing with Ways and Means and testimony due by 10:05 on Tuesday. Another hydrogen bill, Senate Bill 2283, would require UH's Hawaii Natural Energy Institute to study production of hydrogen from local renewable resources and develop a hydrogen strategic plan. And the SD1 requires consulting with the gas company. A question that has been asked is whether developing hydrogen from wood or natural gas, as most hydrogen currently is generated. The life cycle analysis would indicate these are definitely not zero emissions when you're burning them to produce hydrogen. So that's an issue in the development of hydrogen that people can focus on. Again, they're hearing testimony only to WHAM by Monday at 10:15. There are two bills of interest, House Bill 2089 HD1 and Senate Bill 3057 SD1, which deal with the renewable portfolio standard definition, and they correct a calculation to percent generated rather than percent sold. That is a hearing at the CPC committee in the House, testimony due Tuesday by 2 p.m. House Bill 2256 and Senate Bill 3273 create a working group to consider establishing a separate Department of Environmental Protection. It's now, the environmental function is now part of the Department of Health, These bills have made it to the Finance Committee and WAM committees, but no hearings have been scheduled yet. House Bill 2148, House Draft 1, would increase penalties for violating water pollution law and clarify the Director of Health's authority over water quality certifications under Clean Water Act, Section 401. Senate Bill 3220 is a similar bill that increases penalties for water pollution law violations. And finally, Senate Bill 2483 SD1 sets a goal in planning for all utility scale electricity generation to prioritize renewables. That has a hearing, again, written testimony only, to WAM by Monday, 10 a.m. So those are just some of the bills of interest that I saw that weren't covered, I think, by the task forces. And if you have any interest in those, contact those committees. Thank you very much. Any other matters, Tyler?
Thank you
Ted?
so much, Ted. I think we have a question.
Yeah, I had a question. This is Jan Pappas, and I missed several of the bills. I think the numbers of them. I'm wondering if there will be a compilation of all that you've talked about today, or I know that you're going to be having this recorded. It is recorded, right?
It's recorded, and there is in the chat, Ted Boland has put in so kindly a file called HECA Task Force Bills 2-18-22.docx. You should be able to click on that in the chat and see all the bills, as well as a little bit of information about each one. I'll list it out there. So, and we will also send a follow-up email to participants with this information.
Oh, thank you so much. That would be great.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it looks like we have another question, but Ted, if you want to do a follow-up, you can before I'll pass the mic off to Kelly.
Just a comment. I stick that file in there. Those are my opinions. I'm not speaking for HECA. I'm just speaking for Ted Boland. And obviously, all of you are making your own decisions about which bills you support. So any of the opinions you hear today are for information, and you can reach your own conclusions about what you want to do on these bills, and if nothing, or whether you want to get involved. I urge you to get involved if you have strong feelings about this. This is participatory democracy, I like to think, at its best. So
Yes.
Thank you all.
Beautiful. Council Member King, would you like to speak?
Thank you so much, Tyler. You're doing a terrific job. I wanted to ask Ted something. I'm not sure. I think we've been following several of these sunscreen bills at the state level. Yes. to get chemical sunscreens banned. They're not quite what we would like to see in the direction of an environmental protection bill. So I thought that Senate Bill 3001 was still moving, and I wonder if you could speak to any of those bills and why we sort of collectively reversed our position on these bills.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman King. Hard to say.
Just call me Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly is what I should say. I'm just being formal. Thank you for your question. Yes, there were two sunscreen bills that would have prohibited the sale of sunscreens that were not found by the Federal Drug Administration to be generally recognized as safe and effective. We initially supported those bills. We have reversed that. The House Bill 1519 died with first lateral. The Senate bill is still alive. It would be heard by Chairs Baker and I think Rhodes if it's heard. But personally, I don't favor that bill. The problem, as I see it, is that it's based on the FDA's health determination. The bills we've passed in Hawaii in the past, banning oxybenzone and octinoxate, were based on protecting reef and ocean marine species. And even if there's no human health impact as found by the FDA, we still want to have law protecting our environment. And the Senate Bill 3001 doesn't do that. So that's why we are no longer supporting that.
Thank you for that explanation. Just want to let folks know that we do support, this started out as an environmental protection bill. There were like 4 versions of it, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate. And the conversation around it became more about human health, and probably because of the dermatologists who are trying to promote their own products. So we reversed our decision kind of collectively, because it was no longer focused on environmental protection, I think. And that's where we need to go, I think, the next go around if we try to do this. But right now it allows, if we don't get the preemption, it allows each county to do its own bill. Maui County passed the strongest, most aggressive sunscreen chemical ban, and Hawaii Island is working on that. So if you can support Rebecca Villegas in that effort, maybe we'll get all of our counties on board before the state even addresses this next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much. Matt, your hand is up.
Yeah, real quick. I did want to mention, a couple people are asking about when these bills need to have their hearing scheduled for. So maybe John or Ted could comment on that. And I also wanted to shout out for the bills, I believe, that are still alive related to the Red Hill fuel leak. I believe those are, and I'll put these in the chat, HB 2274, HB 2514, and SB 2172. So I'll put those in the chat. Those would be related to underground fuel storage tanks, which obviously they're directed at Red Hill.
There's a question in the chat of great importance for these bills, which is, when do they next need hearings for the ones that have been mentioned as in their next committee, but not yet a hearing? The answer is they have to be heard and passed to the House floor by March 4th, I believe, first decking. So we don't have a lot of time. We have a little time now that we're past first lateral, but you know, it's March 4th is, I think, the next deadline that would cause the bills to die. Somebody asked about fireworks. There are 2 bills that I'm aware of that would increase the fees and the penalties for illegal use of fireworks. That's House Bill 2185 and Senate Bill 2923 on fireworks.
Thank you so much, Ted. If we haven't got to your question yet, please raise your hand or put it in the chat. Sorry for the background noise, but other than that, if there are no other questions, going once, going twice, I'll hand it off to Ted to say the final aloha.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you all for showing up today and for staying on. We've got almost as many people as we started with. That's a great turnout and a great showing of interest that's detailed. I really appreciate your being here, and really thank all of you for staying involved in our democracy here in Hawaii. And if there is anything else, unless any of the other people on the call have something that they wish to say in conclusion, if you would be willing to fill out some short questions afterward, I think we may have a questionnaire available when you sign out. Very short. Just want to get a little bit of feedback from you as to how this went. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again for coming. Thanks, Tyler, for kicking it off. And aloha. Have a great day.
Thank you all. And yeah, if you want to be a part of these task forces that presented today, please visit this document I posted in the chat and reach out to the facilitators via email.
Great job,
Thank you all.
everybody. Thank you so much.